What if I told you that even portraits can gossip? Not just the usual school chatter, but deep, shivering whispers of secrets buried under a century of dust and candle smoke. Tonight, you're not a student, you're a wanderer, one of the few who's been allowed to step inside Hogwarts long after the laughter has faded from its stone corridors. The castle breathes differently now. The torches flicker lower, the suits of armor no longer sing under their breath, and the portraits, they seem to be waiting for you. Somewhere beyond the grand staircase, behind a tapestry depicting a rather disorganized troll rebellion, lies Dumbledore's office, frozen in time. So many have wondered what he left behind: books, trinkets, maybe even a few secrets about the Deathly Hallows. But you're here for something stranger. The whispers that only begin when the candles flicker twice. You might want to sit down for this, but remember, no one really survives a night alone in this castle without hearing something they wish they hadn't. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The floor creaks beneath your feet as you step into the circular office. The air smells faintly of lemon drops and ash. The portraits of past headmasters are half awake, pretending not to look your way, but one, an older witch in emerald robes, leans forward and says, "He used to stay up past dawn, you know," talking to himself, or to someone who wasn't there. A chill races down your spine. The historical fact is easy enough to recall. Dumbledore became headmaster in 1956, transforming Hogwarts into a beacon of progressive magic. But the portrait isn't talking about politics. She's talking about the nights when Dumbledore would light every candle in the tower and pace, whispering as if trying to argue with a ghost. You spot Fox's perch empty, except for one faintly glowing feather. Scholars have debated for decades whether phoenixes return to their masters, and one fringe theory claims Fox didn't leave at all. He simply changed shape, living within the castle's walls like a heartbeat. You reach out, fingertips brushing the feather, and the portraits stir again. "He never left," says another, a stout wizard with silver-rimmed spectacles. "He's still keeping watch." The light in the room pulses once, twice, and for the briefest moment, the mirror on the far wall ripples. You catch a reflection, not your own, but a figure with half-moon glasses and knowing eyes. The scholar in you itches for an explanation, perhaps a trick of candlelight or the residue of enchantments too strong to fade, but a smaller voice, the one that still believes in bedtime stories, whispers something different. That some people never truly die if the world keeps speaking their name. A quill rolls across the desk on its own, scrawling a single word in deep blue ink: "Listen." The portraits fall silent. Outside, thunder rumbles low and distant, as though the castle itself is exhaling. You close your eyes and hear faint, overlapping voices, dozens, hundreds, layers of Dumbledore's memory stitched into the stones, waiting to tell their stories. And tonight, they begin with his first great secret, the one that nearly cost him his soul. You follow the whisper, down corridors lined with sleeping portraits and staircases that seem to twist out of politeness rather than physics. The sound leads you not to a classroom or a chamber, but to the old astronomy tower, the place where, as history solemnly tells it, Albus Dumbledore met his end. But tonight, there is no tragedy in the air, only the soft hum of wind through shattered stone. A single candle burns where he once stood, and beside it, carved faintly into the parapet, is a name: Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. You trace the letters with your fingertips, half expecting them to glow, and as they do, the candlelight bends backward in time. You see him, not the headmaster, not the elder statesman of the order, but a young man with ink-stained fingers and a mind sharp enough to cut glass. His hair is auburn, his laughter too confident, his eyes far too kind for someone who already carries so much guilt. This was before the wars, before Grindelwald, before the Elder Wand ever whispered his name. Scholars have long argued that Dumbledore's first true confrontation with death happened when his sister Ariana died, but that's not entirely true. The first time he met death, it was on purpose. The story, buried deep in a century-old issue of Transfiguration today, tells of a young prodigy experimenting with the liminal veil, a theory suggesting a way to converse with souls between life and death. Most dismissed it as youthful arrogance, but one letter, signed only APWBD, detailed a successful attempt. Dumbledore described hearing a voice beyond the veil, a voice offering him knowledge in exchange for forgetting one memory of his own choosing. Imagine that, trading a piece of your past for a secret no one else could hold. The fringe rumor? That he took the offer. And when the ritual ended, he couldn't remember what he had given away. You feel it then, the slight ringing in your ears, like someone whispering a word you can't quite catch. The candle flickers blue. The scholarly debate still rages, of course. Some insist the tale was a fabrication of rival academics jealous of his genius. But others, like Bahilda Bagshot in her private notes, claimed that after that summer, Dumbledore began to speak more softly, as if half of him lived somewhere he could no longer reach. A joke would help lighten the tension here, but even you can tell this isn't the place for punchlines, though you can't help but wonder if even Dumbledore once muttered, "Well, that was a mistake," under his breath afterward. You move closer to the parapet, peering down at the drop that once ended him, and a strange calm fills you. The night smells of rain and lightning, and the whispering voice, the one that's been tugging you along, finally forms words. He didn't die here, it says, soft as parchment being turned. He only changed. You step back, startled, but the voice continues, gentler now. The boy who outsmarted death didn't do it with spells. He did it with a promise. Your heart thuds as the candle extinguishes itself, plunging the tower into darkness. Below, faint lights flicker from the castle windows, and for a brief, disorienting moment, you see a reflection of yourself standing in the same spot 100 years ago, listening to the same whisper. The line between past and present blurs like fog on glass. And though you tell yourself this must all be residual magic, some part of you, perhaps the part that still believes in bedtime stories, knows you've just heard the beginning of Dumbledore's oldest secret. The path back from the astronomy tower winds downward in looping stone spirals that never seem to end in quite the same place twice. By the time you reach the fifth landing, you realize the air has grown colder, the shadows sharper, and your footsteps quieter, as if the castle itself has decided you're no longer a visitor, but a participant. You find yourself before a door you don't remember seeing before. It's plain oak, unmarked, except for a faint shimmer of silver light pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the grain. You push it open, and the world folds inward. You're standing inside the room of requirement. It's different tonight, not filled with junk or lost memories, but with mirrors. Dozens of them, all cracked, all reflecting something that isn't quite you. In the center stands a single shard mounted on a velvet pedestal, a surviving fragment of the Mirror of East. The stories say it shattered during the war, but this piece, at least, has refused to fade. As you draw closer, your reflection wavers, and suddenly, someone else stands beside you. The half-moon glasses are unmistakable, but the eyes are weary, and his voice, when it comes, sounds like parchment sliding against itself. "You shouldn't be here," he murmurs. But then again, neither should I. You want to speak, but your throat catches. The reflection, Dumbledore, or something wearing his likeness, smiles faintly. Do you know what you'd see if you looked deeply enough into this mirror? Not your heart's desire, but its oldest lie. Scholars have always debated the true nature of the Mirror of Erised. The canonical explanation, it shows not your face, but your heart's deepest wish, is comforting meat. But an unpublished essay found among Dumbledore's belongings argues something more unsettling, that the mirror doesn't reveal what you want, but what you've already lost. A simple twist of perspective, and the whole legend changes shape. You reach out, your fingers brushing the glass. It ripples beneath your touch, and in an instant, you're somewhere else, standing in a sunlit field, watching two boys duel with laughter rather than wands. One of them you recognize, young Albus, smiling, alive in a way you've never seen him. The other has pale hair and eyes like storm clouds. Grindelwald. Their laughter fills the air until it abruptly cuts off, frozen mid-breath. You see, says the voice beside you, some memories are too heavy to die. They anchor themselves to the world until someone is foolish enough to find them. You glance back at the mirror, where the reflection of Dumbledore has shifted. He's older now, robe scorched, expression haunted. He loved him, you whisper without meaning to. The reflection nods once, a barely perceptible motion. And that was his undoing. The mirror cracks again, a hairline fracture racing across its surface. A faint melody drifts through the room, perhaps Fox's song, or just the castle sighing in its sleep. For a heartbeat, you see your own reflection replaced by countless others, seekers, students, and dreamers who stood where you stand now, all chasing the same question: who is Dumbledore, really? The debate among historians is endless. Saint or strategist, savior or sinner. The truth, the whisper seems to say, is both and neither. A flicker of humor bubbles up in you despite the weight of it all. You know, you mutter, for a bedtime story, this is getting a bit existential. The room doesn't disagree. The shard gleams once more, then dins, leaving you alone with the soft echo of Fox's unseen wings. As you turn to leave, the mirrors realign themselves, and for a split second, you glimpse a future version of yourself, older, wiser, and maybe just a little bit more magical than before. You blink, and it's gone. Only the faint scent of lemon drops lingers in the air, and the whisper of Dumbledore's voice, fading into silence. Every truth worth finding must first break your heart. The corridors grow narrower as you descend, their stones slick with condensation, the torches thinning until the only light left comes from the faint blue glow of your wand tip. You followed the whispers this far, past the portraits, the tower, the mirror, but now they take on a new cadence, not like speech, but like the rhythm of someone breathing on the other side of a door. You push forward until the air tastes of metal and dust, and there it is, an iron gate engraved with the initials G.G. Gellert Grindelwald. The historian in you box. You're not in Britain anymore. This place feels wrong, colder, older. When you blink, the walls shift, and suddenly you're standing before the gray fortress of Nurmengard, its black spire knifing into the clouds. The real one was dismantled decades ago after the war, but this feels alive, like a memory preserved in stone. You step inside. The corridors are lined with mirrors of obsidian, all reflecting the same two figures at the far end of a narrow hall, Dumbledore and Grindelwald, older now, seated across a small table. The air hums with quiet tension, like the moment before a duel. You know the scene from history books, their legendary confrontation in 1945, a battle that reshaped the wizarding world. But what you're seeing isn't that. This is years later, after the dust settled. A conversation between old men who once dreamed of remaking the world and ended up destroying it instead. You came, Grindelwald says, voice brittle but still carrying that dangerous charm. Even after everything, Dumbledore, pale and thin, gives a sad smile. I had to. There are things I must ask before I go. Scholars have always disagreed about this rumored final meeting. Some say Dumbledore sought forgiveness. Others claim he came for one last secret. The fringe theory? That Grindelwald told him something about the Hallows, something that changed his understanding of them forever. You still believe love can fix what we broke? Grindelwald asks. I believe. Dumbledore replies softly. That love was the only thing that ever made it worth breaking. The moment flickers, the scene dissolving like smoke. You catch your reflection in the dark glass again and realize your hand is trembling. For all his wisdom, Dumbledore carried a guilt so deep it became its own kind of magic, protective, relentless, and quietly consuming. You wonder what he saw when he looked at his old friend in that cell. A mirror of himself, perhaps, or the ghost of the boy who once thought he could save the world with cleverness and charm. You almost laugh at the thought. Even great wizards, it seems, are terrible at picking friends. A faint scratching draws your attention. One of the mirrors has changed, its surface etched with fresh words. He did not kill to win. He won because he would not kill. A paradox, but then again, that's Dumbledore all over, too moral for power, too powerful for peace. You glance upward as thunder cracks above Nurmengard's tower, and for an instant, you see the shadow of a phoenix circling the spire, wings glowing faintly in the storm. Maybe Fawkes was here too, watching history repeat itself in infinite loops. You're still seeking his secrets. Grindelwald's voice murmurs behind you, faint but teasing. You'll find them, perhaps, but will you survive knowing them? You turn, but the cell is empty. The mirrors have gone dark, leaving only the faint echo of two men laughing softly in a language the world has long forgotten. The castle fades back into the familiar chill of Hogwarts as you exhale, realizing you've just walked through a conversation no living soul was ever meant to hear. The night grows softer now, the castle's breath slower, as if it, too, is beginning to dream. You follow the faint echo of that laughter until it leads you to the outskirts of Hogsmeade, where the snow falls thicker and the lights of the Hog's Head and glow like half-forgotten stars through the fog. The place looks abandoned, one shutter hanging crooked, the smell of butterbeer ghosts clinging to the air, but you push open the door anyway. It groans like it hasn't been moved in years. Inside, everything is coated in a fine layer of dust, except for one small table in the corner where a candle still burns. The flame doesn't flicker. It hums, and beside it lies a single phoenix feather, dull at first glance, but faintly vibrating as if alive. You sit, not entirely sure why, and the moment you whisper Dumbledore's name aloud, the air quivers. The feather glows bright gold, humming louder until it's almost music, Fawkes' song, slowed down to something like a heartbeat. You realize what you're hearing isn't sound at all but memory. Phoenixes, after all, are creatures of cyclical magic, rebirth, renewal, resistance to endings. The historical record notes that Fawkes vanished the night Dumbledore died, never to be seen again. But in the archives of the Department of Mysteries, a fragment of parchment, dated decades later, describes a golden bird sighted near the ruins of Nurmengard, singing to the wind. Coincidence, maybe, or maybe not. The scholars argue endlessly, of course. Was the phoenix a symbol, a creature, or something Dumbledore created himself? One eccentric wizarding naturalist even proposed that phoenixes are the echoes of great souls choosing to stay. A comforting thought, until you remember how many feathers line the cores of wands. You reach out to touch the feather, and warmth spreads up your fingers, into your arm, and into your chest. For an instant, you're standing in sunlight again, beside a young Dumbledore holding that same feather, smiling sadly. Do you know what's remarkable about fire? He says. It doesn't destroy, it reveals what was already fragile. You blink, and the image fades. The room smells of ash and lemon peel now, and the candle's flame has split into two, like wings. A soft chuckle escapes you. It's absurd, of course, chasing glowing feathers in a haunted pub, but absurdity seems to follow Dumbledore wherever he goes. You notice something carved into the wood of the table, hidden under a century of dust, for those who seek truth, not glory. It's his handwriting, you're sure of it. You wonder if this was his sanctuary, the place he came when Hogwarts grew too loud, when being the wisest man in the world felt like a cage. Maybe this is where he first realized wisdom and loneliness were the same thing. The feather dens curling inward, its light sinking into the tabletop until only a faint warmth remains. Outside, the snow has stopped falling, and for a brief moment, the clouds part. A thin beam of moonlight hits the candle and refracts across the room, forming the shape of a bird mid-flight before fading into darkness. You sit there for a long time, the silence humming in your bones, until you finally stand and whisper, "Thank you." The floor creaks once as you leave, and from behind the bar, faint and almost playful, comes a voice you could swear belongs to Aberforth Dumbledore himself. He always did like dramatic exits. You smile despite yourself and step back into the cold, following the last flicker of the Phoenix's light as it drifts toward the castle, back towards secrets that are almost ready to be told. The night grows softer now, the castle's breath slower, as if it too is beginning to dream. You follow the faint echo of that laughter until it leads you to the outskirts of Hogsmeade, where the snow falls thicker and the lights of the Hog's Head and glow like half-forgotten stars through the fog. The place looks abandoned, one shutter hanging crooked, the smell of butterbeer ghosts clinging to the air, but you push open the door anyway. It groans like it hasn't been moved in years. Inside, everything is coated in a fine layer of dust, except for one small table in the corner where a candle still burns. The flame doesn't flicker. It hums, and beside it lies a single phoenix feather, dull at first glance, but faintly vibrating as if alive. You sit, not entirely sure why, and the moment you whisper Dumbledore's name aloud, the air quivers. The feather glows bright gold, humming louder until it's almost music, Fox's song, slowed down to something like a heartbeat. You realize what you're hearing isn't sound at all but memory. Phoenixes, after all, are creatures of cyclical magic, rebirth, renewal, resistance to endings. The historical record notes that Fawkes vanished the night Dumbledore died, never to be seen again. But in the archives of the Department of Mysteries, a fragment of parchment, dated decades later, describes a golden bird sighted near the ruins of Nurmengard, singing to the wind. Coincidence, maybe, or maybe not. The scholars argue endlessly, of course. Was the phoenix a symbol, a creature, or something Dumbledore created himself? One eccentric wizarding naturalist even proposed that phoenixes are the echoes of great souls choosing to stay. A comforting thought, until you remember how many feathers line the cores of wands. You reach out to touch the feather, and warmth spreads up your fingers, into your arm, and into your chest. For an instant, you're standing in sunlight again, beside a young Dumbledore holding that same feather, smiling sadly. "Do you know what's remarkable about fire?" he says. "It doesn't destroy, it reveals what was already fragile." You blink, and the image fades. The room smells of ash and lemon peel now, and the candle's flame has split into two, like wings. A soft chuckle escapes you. It's absurd, of course, chasing glowing feathers in a haunted pub, but absurdity seems to follow Dumbledore wherever he goes. You notice something carved into the wood of the table, hidden under a century of dust, for those who seek truth, not glory. It's his handwriting, you're sure of it. You wonder if this was his sanctuary, the place he came when Hogwarts grew too loud, when being the wisest man in the world felt like a cage. Maybe this is where he first realized wisdom and loneliness were the same thing. The feather dens curling inward, its light sinking into the tabletop until only a faint warmth remains. Outside, the snow has stopped falling, and for a brief moment, the clouds part. A thin beam of moonlight hits the candle and refracts across the room, forming the shape of a bird mid-flight before fading into darkness. You sit there for a long time, the silence humming in your bones, until you finally stand and whisper, "Thank you." The floor creaks once as you leave, and from behind the bar, faint and almost playful, comes a voice you could swear belongs to Aberforth Dumbledore himself. He always did like dramatic exits. You smile despite yourself and step back into the cold, following the last flicker of the Phoenix's light as it drifts toward the castle, back towards secrets that are almost ready to be told. By the time you return to the castle, the night has thickened into velvet. The corridors are hushed, every portrait asleep, save one, the fat friar, who raises a ghostly eyebrow as you pass and mutters, "You're walking the same path he did, you know. Just don't make the same mistake." You'd laugh if your breath didn't already fog in the air. Somewhere above you, the ceiling hums faintly, and you follow the sound to a staircase that shouldn't exist, a narrow, spiral thing that climbs straight through stone. You climb higher and higher until the walls begin to shimmer and the air grows warm again. When you reach the top, the staircase ends in a door marked by a single glowing rune, Veritas. You knock once. The rune flickers, then vanishes. The door opens on its own, revealing a classroom, one that shouldn't exist. Dustless desks, quills still upright in inkpots, faint traces of chalk on the board. It's as though the students simply vanished mid-lesson. But there's something else. The air hums with a strange anticipation, the same feeling you get before thunder. This, you realize, must be the room that appears only once a decade, the unwritten lesson, whispered about by a handful of old professors who swore they'd seen it in their dreams. According to an obscure entry in Hogwarts, a history, the room manifests when the castle deems a seeker ready to learn what it has to teach. Tonight, apparently, it has chosen you. The chalk lifts on its own, scrawling words across the board. He who teaches truth must first forgive himself. You stand frozen as the chalk writes again, faster now, looping like a heartbeat. He couldn't forgive himself. So the castle remembered for him. The lights dim. The room fills with faint echoes, Dumbledore's voice lecturing, laughter, footsteps, and the unmistakable crackle of a phoenix song woven through it all. You sit at a desk without realizing it, hands trembling slightly. On the wood before you, a faint pattern begins to appear, rings, like water ripples burned into the grain. You touch them and suddenly the room changes. You're no longer alone. Dumbledore stands before you, not as a ghost, but as a projection of memory. His expression is soft, his tone weary. "If you are hearing this," he begins, "then Hogwarts believes you are searching for what I could not teach, mercy toward one's own heart." He looks at the desks, at the empty chairs. "For all my talk of love's power, I never truly practiced it upon myself." And that, he adds with a sad little smile, is why even the wisest must sometimes be students again. The chalk writes one final line on the board, "Every truth has its cost. Every cost, its mercy." The memory flickers, and suddenly, you're alone again. You stand slowly, realizing your palms are wet with ink, the kind that only appears when truth has been written. You whisper, "What did he mean?" But the room gives no answer. Only the faint flutter of wings somewhere above. You step toward the door, and as you do, the rune reappears. It burns brighter this time, flooding the room with light so warm and golden it feels alive. You smile, unexpectedly emotional. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. The light softens, the rune fades, and the door creaks open onto an entirely different corridor, one you've never seen before. You realize the castle isn't leading you in circles anymore. It's leading you somewhere specific. Somewhere that waits, patient and silent, for the truth to be read aloud. The corridor you step into feels older than the rest of the castle, as though you've crossed into Hogwarts' subconscious, a place made of whispers and half-remembered dreams. Dust lies thick over the stones, but not a single cobweb hangs. It's as if time itself tiptoes here. You follow the path until it ends at a narrow wooden desk covered in parchment, the wax of an extinguished candle frozen mid-drip. A single envelope rests at the center, sealed with dark blue wax and an embossed A. The edges shimmer faintly in the light from your wand. You don't need anyone to tell you whose hand wrote the curling script across its front, to Harry Potter for when he is ready. You exhale slowly. A legend among historians claims that a final letter from Dumbledore was never delivered, that it vanished from the castle archives the night after the funeral. Some call it a myth, others a ministry cover-up. But here it is. The wax resists when you press it, then yields with a soft crack. The parchment smells faintly of lemon and ash. The handwriting is delicate, slanted slightly left, as if written in haste. My dear boy, there are truths I could not tell you while I yet lived, not for lack of trust, but for fear that knowing them too soon would bind you to the same mistakes I made. Power, love, and guilt make strange bedfellows, and I knew too much of all three. If you ever wonder whether I used you, I did, but not in the way you think. I used your hope to remind myself that such a thing still existed. The rest is smudged, as though by tears or rain that has no business being indoors. You glance up, but the ceiling seems to breathe, condensation forming along the beams like the castle itself is crying. The letter continues in a shakier hand. Grindelwald taught me that the brightest ideals can cast the longest shadows. I once believed intelligence could redeem the world. I was wrong. Only compassion can. You, Harry, were my proof. Do not let the world harden you. When you find yourself tempted to choose the greater good, pause and ask, greater for whom? A simple line, yet it feels heavy enough to tilt history. You think of the thousands of students who passed through these halls, never knowing that their headmaster's greatest strength was his ability to doubt himself. A faint laugh escapes you, dry, incredulous. Of course, he'd write a confession letter and then hide it under the school. You half expect a portrait to scold you for irreverence, but none stir. The room remains still, reverent even in emptiness. The last lines of the letter shimmer as you tilt it toward the light. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and Fox has sung for the last time. Remember, I never feared death. I feared forgetting. Whatever you do, keep remembering. A.D. You fold the letter carefully, your fingers trembling. The historian in you knows what this means, a priceless artifact, the missing link between the myth and the man. The dreamer in you, though, hears something else, the tone of a weary teacher still trying to comfort a child long after the lesson has ended. You look around and notice faint burn marks on the desk's edge, as though someone tried to destroy the letter and failed. Maybe the castle intervened, refusing to let Dumbledore's final words be lost. You slip the envelope back where it was and whisper, "He never really left, did he?" From somewhere behind you, a faint chuckle echoes, soft and knowing. "Oh, he left," says a voice you can't quite place, but he made sure the story wouldn't. You spin around, but there's only empty air and the faint scent of lemon drops lingering in the dust. You smile in spite of the goosebumps prickling your skin. Every mystery about Dumbledore seems to end this way, not with answers, but with more doors. And one of them, you sense, is already waiting just ahead, behind a whisper that sounds very much like an old man saying, "One last lesson if you're willing." You follow the voice through the flickering corridor until the dust gives way to cool stone steps spiraling downward. Each footfall hums faintly, like the castle is alive with memory. At first, you think it's just the echo of your breath, but then you realize the walls are murmuring a low, layered whisper, dozens of voices overlapping in tones too soft to separate. You lift your wand and the flame flutters pale gold against carvings etched deep into the stairwell. Names, initials, dates. Some you recognize, students, teachers, even ghosts. Others are long erased, letters eroded into abstraction. At the bottom, the stairs open into a round chamber that shouldn't exist. It's vast yet claustrophobic, lit by floating orbs suspended in concentric circles above a single stone basin. The air smells faintly of ozone, of something halfway between lightning and memory. You step closer and the whispers sharpen into coherence. The basin is filled not with water, but with a silvery substance that shifts like smoke under glass, the pensive. Or rather, a piece of it. This one hums with a pulse, connected by faint tendrils of light to the floating orbs above. Every orb flickers with a scene, Dumbledore walking across the Great Hall, a phoenix circling over a battlefield, Harry, pale and shaking, holding a wand that isn't his. You realize what this is: the castle's hidden archive, not of events, but of emotions tied to them. It hits you suddenly. Hogwarts has been recording, not in ink or parchment, but in resonance, the emotional signatures of everyone who's ever lived within its walls. The pensive below you isn't a tool of memory, it's a nervous system. You kneel beside it, drawn by this same curiosity that must have driven Dumbledore once. The silvery mist ripples as you lean closer, and before you can decide whether to resist, it pulls you in. The sensation is immediate, like plunging into ice. You're falling, but there's no wind, no impact, only light, blinding and liquid. When your vision clears, you're standing in the Great Hall, but it's not the present. The banners overhead bear the old-school crests, Hogwarts before the war. Dumbledore stands at the head table, younger, face unlined, eyes bright with the arrogance of certainty. He's arguing with someone you can't see at first. Then, from the shadows, another figure steps forward, Gellert Grindelwald. Their voices overlap, both so calm it's chilling. The world will choose power over mercy, Grindelwald says. So we must give them a power that forces mercy. You mistake control for kindness, Dumbledore replies, and intention for salvation. The vision ripples, skipping like a damaged reel. You see flashes, books burning, children running through corridors, spells like comets streaking through the air. The image steadies again, this time on Dumbledore kneeling beside a shattered window, his wand trembling in his hand. His voice is a whisper. "Forgive me." You realize with a cold twist that he's speaking not to the dead, but to the castle itself. The floor beneath you glows faintly, and you feel warmth recognition. Hogwarts remembers him, too. The vision dissolves, and suddenly you're back in the chamber, gasping, wand light flickering violently. The orbs above you pulse faster, their glow brightening into a pattern, like the heartbeat of the castle syncing with your own. Then you hear footsteps. Curious, isn't it? The voice is calm, but heavy with fatigue. From the shadows emerges Professor McGonagall, her robes immaculate even in the dim light. She looks at the basin, then at you, eyes sharp with both suspicion and understanding. "He left this place for a reason," she says quietly. "Some memories are meant to guide, others to warn." You stammer something about the letter, about Dumbledore's plea to remember, but she raises a hand. "He believed memory was mercy. I've learned it can also be a chain." For a moment, her expression softens. "Still, perhaps you were meant to find us. The castle shows what it wills." You ask if she's ever entered the pensive herself. Her gaze drifts toward the glowing orbs. "Once," she says, "after the war. I wanted to understand what drove him. I came out with more questions than I entered." She steps closer, touching the rim of the basin with one finger. "But I did learn this. The past isn't silent. It waits." You look again at the silvery surface and see, faintly, your own reflection morphing, your features blurred with his, then hers, then hundreds of others who once stood where you are. The message is clear. Memory isn't possession, it's participation. You're part of the story now, whether you mean to be or not. As you back away, the lights above dim one by one until only a single orb remains. It descends slowly, hovering before you. Inside, an image flickers, a door marked Headmaster's office. And from within, that familiar voice again, calm, gentle, faintly amused. Upstairs, if you please. The lesson's not over. Your heart beats faster. You glance once more at McGonagall. She nods, almost imperceptibly. "Go on then," she says. "He always did love a good entrance." You climb the narrow staircase, pulse quickening as the torches along the wall ignite one by one in a golden ripple, as if the castle itself is anticipating your arrival. The air grows warmer the higher you go, humming faintly with energy that tastes of old parchment, lemon drops, and faint traces of smoke. You reach the top landing, where the griffin-shaped door to the headmaster's office stands silent and waiting. Its bronze eyes flick open when you approach. "Password," it rasps. You hesitate, because you have none, but then, like a memory whispered into your ear, the word slips out of your mouth before you can think. "Sherbet lemon." The griffin smiles, or perhaps that's a trick of the light, and begins to rotate, revealing the spiraling staircase beyond. You step inside. The office is just as you imagined, and yet not at all what you expected. The walls shimmer with half-vanished portraits. Some faces watch you sleepily, others turn away as though still grieving. On the great claw-footed desk lies an open book, its pages blank, but the air around it glows faintly, humming in a pitch that feels uncomfortably like awareness.
And then he's there, Dumbledore, or rather, what remains of him, a projection, a preserved fragment suspended in the faint blue shimmer of memory. He looks as though he's been expecting you, hands folded calmly behind his back, eyes twinkling with that maddening blend of kindness and mischief. He says softly, "So you've made it here after all. The castle must think you're ready." His voice carries that same warmth that could both comfort and disarm. You try to speak, but your words tangle uselessly, questions tripping over one another. He chuckles lightly. Yes, I imagine there's quite a lot you'd like to ask. Why the letters? Why the secrets? Why the strange sense that the past won't sit quietly, even when asked politely? He turns toward the window, where the moonlight filters through in liquid silver, painting half his face in ghostly illumination. The truth, my dear listener, is that Hogwarts has never been just a school. It's a living archive, one that listens more keenly than we do, remembers longer than we can bear, and forgives more slowly than we'd hope. He gestures toward the pensive below, visible through a faint seam of enchanted glass in the floor. Every act of courage, cruelty, hope, and despair has left an imprint. My own, most of all. His tone darkens, just slightly. I was never quite the man people thought me to be. Greatness, they called it. Wisdom. But wisdom without humility, he says, turning back toward you, is simply another form of blindness. He pauses, then smiles faintly, almost sadly. I made choices that cost lives. Friends, family, trust. You may have heard that I defeated Grindelwald. That part is true. What they forget to mention is that victory never feels like triumph when it's the price of your soul. He lifts his hand, and the air between you fills with images, quick flashes like raindrops of memory. You see the duel with Grindelwald, spells streaking like lightning, glass shattering, the world tilting on its axis. You see Ariana, pale and still. You see Dumbledore kneeling, shaking, his wand falling from his hand. Then another image, a young Tom Riddle in the office before you, smiling a smile that's too polite to be sincere. I try to guide him, Dumbledore murmurs, but I was too proud to see what he'd already become. The boy was a mirror, and I too afraid to look. He waves his hand, and the images dissolve like smoke. So you see, he says gently, the great Albus Dumbledore is not a legend to be admired, but a man to be understood, and perhaps pitied a little. You take a step closer, feeling the pull of empathy that so often precedes revelation. Then why leave this behind? You ask quietly. Why make us remember? He studies you for a moment, and the room feels suddenly smaller. Because, he says, the moment a story ends, so does its lesson. History must breathe, or it becomes myth, and myth makes fools of us all. He leans closer, lowering his voice until it's barely above a whisper. The castle chose you because it still needs witnesses. Memory isn't enough anymore. The world outside is forgetting magic, meaning, mercy. I need someone who listens. You ask what it is you're meant to do, but his form is already beginning to fade, the glow around him flickering like candlelight in a draught. When you wake, he says softly, remember this. Magic begins not in power, but in responsibility. Every secret you keep, every truth you share, those are spells too. Cast them wisely. His last words hang in the air, suspended in silver light. The next headmaster is never chosen by decree, but by conscience. The image blurs, then vanishes entirely. The room grows darker. Only the faint ticking of the old orrery remains, its golden planet circling in eternal rhythm. You stand there, breath shallow, realizing that the story isn't ending, it's turning. You glance down at the open book on the desk, and the blank pages are no longer blank. Ink begins to appear, letter by letter, in elegant, looping script. To remember is to resist the fading of light. The book hums faintly, sealing itself shut. The castle seems to exhale a long, tired breath through the stone. You step back, the weight of the moment settling over you like a heavy cloak. Perhaps that's the true secret of Albus Dumbledore, not his spells, not his brilliance, but his understanding that even in the quietest corners of history, stories still need keepers. And now, for better or worse, that's you. You descend the final spiral staircase with a quiet reverence, the castle around you humming like a soft lullaby, as though it knows this is the last chapter of tonight's journey. The torches along the walls flicker, casting shadows that curl into shapes you half recognize, young witches and wizards peering around corners, a phoenix mid-flight, and the faint outline of Dumbledore himself, his smile lingering in the dim air. You reach the corridor outside the headmaster's office, but it's transformed. The stone walls are smoother, warmer, lined with small alcoves filled with flickering candles and floating motes of light, each one representing a memory, a choice, a secret preserved. The atmosphere is serene, almost sacred. You pause, letting your eyes wander over the soft illumination, and realize that this is the true legacy of Albus Dumbledore, not the victories, not the accolades, but the quiet, deliberate act of keeping stories alive. As you continue, you find the stairwell leading to the portrait gallery, the one where the fat lady hangs. She blinks at you, expression amused, and you almost swear she winks. On a whim, you ask, "Do you think he'd be proud of me for finding all this?" The fat lady tilts her head, lips twitching into a smile. "Pride is a complicated thing, dear. Perhaps he already is." The gallery leads you to the great hall, now empty, yet echoing faint traces of laughter, chatter, and the clink of goblets. You hear a whisper, soft but unmistakable. The smallest acts of memory are the grandest spells. You wander toward the central dais, the echoes of past feasts and gatherings swirling around you, faint traces of pumpkin juice and treacle tart lingering in the air. The ceiling above reflects the night sky, clouds drifting lazily, stars twinkling like distant fireflies, and you can almost imagine the castle breathing along with you. Somewhere near the entrance, the voice of a young Hagrid drifts faintly, a warm chuckle that reminds you magic is often messy, unpredictable, and deeply human. You remember the phoenix feather in Hogsmeade, the letters, the pensive chamber, the room of mirrors, and every whisper that guided you here. Dumbledore's presence is everywhere, subtle, woven into the stones, the wood, and the very air you breathe. The lesson is clear. Power is temporary, genius fleeting, and even the brightest light must eventually fade, but memory, compassion, and choice endure. You pause at the central dais, the silence around you profound, and whisper aloud, "I understand." The castle seems to sigh in response. From the shadowed alcoves, faint motes of light drift together, forming the outline of a phoenix, wings spread wide, glowing with the soft golden light of remembrance. It circles overhead and hovers briefly before fading, leaving a faint warmth in the air, a quiet affirmation that this journey is complete, but not forgotten. You feel your own pulse align with the rhythm of the castle, each heartbeat a gentle echo of all that has been learned, lost, and preserved here. And as you step toward the exit, the castle seems to guide you with subtle tilts of floor and faint, almost imperceptible nudges, leading you back to familiar corridors, back to the present, where the night is quiet and the snow has ceased. You take one last look over your shoulder at the headmaster's office, the light behind its door soft and steady, and understand that some secrets are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be witnessed, felt, and remembered. As you open the final door to the entrance hall, the wind carries a faint, whispering melody, like the echo of Fox singing for the last time, soft and comforting, and you realize you've been part of something far larger than yourself, a story of memory, mercy, and magic, quietly stitched into the very bones of Hogwarts. Now you step into the chill night air, breathing deeply, the faint scent of lemon drops and old parchment lingering, a soft reminder that stories, like magic, never truly end. The castle behind you is silent once more, yet alive. You walk slowly, letting the calm of the night sink in. Each step is deliberate, each breath a gentle acknowledgement of the journey you've taken. The snow crunches beneath your boots, a rhythm almost hypnotic, and for a moment, the world outside feels like a soft exhale of relief. You smile softly, letting the images, whispers, and faint traces of magic settle into your mind like settling dust. The warmth of understanding, the gentle glow of revelation, and the quiet joy of discovery cocoon you. Tonight, Dumbledore's secrets have been seen, his lessons felt, and perhaps a small piece of his wisdom has found its way into you. The night sky stretches endlessly, calm and reassuring, and for the first time since your journey began, you feel completely present, connected to the echoes of the past, yet anchored firmly in the now. And as the stars glimmer faintly above, the story begins its slow fade, a bedtime story whispered not into ears, but into memory itself. The lights of Hogwarts glimmer faintly in the distance, soft as a lullaby, and the world exhales with you. Let the rhythm of the castle's heartbeat linger. Let the warmth of the phoenix feather, the letter, the pensive, and every whispered secret settle in your chest. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the floating motes, the gentle hum of stone, the soft rustle of wings. Breathe. Allow the narrative to melt into the night, soft as ash, gentle as the end of a dream. Now drift slowly, letting the knowledge, the curiosity, and the quiet magic carry you into a calm, soothing sleep. The night stretches, velvety and calm, over the castle grounds. You can almost feel the stones beneath your feet exhaling, a slow, deliberate breath that carries with it 1,000 memories, both happy and sad, every one a story etched into the heart of Hogwarts. The air is cool, brushing softly across your skin, carrying with it hints of snow, smoke, and old parchment. Somewhere far off, a faint note of a melody drifts across the grounds, echoing like an unfinished spell, a soft reminder that magic persists even in silence. Your eyelids grow heavy as the chill of night wraps around you, comforting like a gentle cloak. You imagine Fox circling high above, the golden light of his wings scattering softly across the rooftops, casting fleeting shadows that dance across the stone. Each shadow carries a memory, a lesson, a secret preserved in silence. You breathe in slowly, letting the quiet fill you, letting the warmth of understanding settle into your chest. For a moment, there is nothing but this gentle calm, the whisper of stone, the soft hum of magic, and the assurance that even the most hidden secrets can be gentle if they are discovered with care. You let your thoughts drift, following the golden glow of memory, the faint scents and sounds, the quiet pulse of the castle. Each step, each breath, each heartbeat is a soft reminder. Stories never truly end. They fade into the mind, gently, leaving you richer for the journey. Allow the quiet to embrace you, soft as the first snow of winter, slow as the rising of dawn. Drift now into a calm sleep where echoes of light and memory linger, reassuring, peaceful, eternal. The world exhales with you, and the story sleeps, quietly, softly at last.